the real hook, though, the best, for me, the main reason why I'm here and the main reason why I'm so excited about this is really the decentralized metaverse that 6529 and team are building.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Raul Paul's Adventures in Crypto. This is Sergio Silva sitting in for Raul. I'm really excited to be here today with two institutional investors in the NFT space, AC and Batsoupyum, both members of Punk 6529's investment fund committee. Gentlemen, how are you? Welcome to Real Vision.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you guys for being here. I'm really excited on the personal side because this is Batsoupyum's first ever podcast appearance, I believe. And we as the space have followed your journey pretty closely, given you're one of the thought leaders. So I feel really honored that you chose to come here today and talk to us more about the NFT space. And AC, you were somebody who's been very visible lately. You're a big collector in the generative art space. So also very excited to discuss what you guys are doing and the fun, what you guys are seeing in the market. And obviously, this crazy crypto world that's been quite the ride over the last 18, 24 months. With that, let's jump in. The audience might not know you very well, especially with your NFT names. But just so that everybody is on the same page, Batsoup is one of the most legendary one-on-one collectors. He's been a big supporter for individual artists in the space. Batsoup, what is your background and how did you come into NFTs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My background is in traditional finance. I was in New York City for many years, worked in that space. I decided to leave traditional finance around 2014 and just run a family office. And one of the main things I did before I got into NFTs was I spent a lot of time giving back. So I decided, I don't know if this was a soul cleanse because of all my time at Wall Street or if it was just always a part of me, but I decided, I'm going to do a little, not more than a little, a lot more charitable work. So then 2020 rolls around and I'd always had a passion for crypto as well. I got involved not quite as early as the OGs, but 2015, 2016 timeframe. And I decided, I've always been attracted to crypto because it had this aspect to it that had cut out intermediaries, cut out traditional finance, my former job, and really had this trustless, permissionless, structure to it that was super attractive to me. And I lived through 08. I did really well. I'm sorry to say, in 07 and 08 in some respects because it was a difficult time, but the whole financial system almost collapsed. That was where I spent a lot of my time and I had a successful exit out of that time period. And I learned a lot. And one of the main things I learned was that, trusting, centralized parties with a lot of power can be very dangerous. And, here we sit today and one of the largest exchanges on planet Earth is just about to go out of business and not go out of business, but sell themselves to one of their largest competitors. So in any event, 2020 rolls around and I start looking at NFTs and I think to myself, this crypto had always been, for me, really interesting for the nerds. And by that, I mean people who are really passionate about these values and these libertarian values and these sort of like, these technological values that cut out, the intermediaries. And NFTs were the first time I ever looked at it and thought, this is the use case for bringing it out from the nerds to the masses. And that, to me, is where I had that aha moment. So fast forward to today, what I decided at that time and where I sit today is that I am really passionate about helping creators. I feel like creators generally get screwed with intermediaries. I mean, just ask any musician, most artists. It's just a long history of creators not getting their due and intermediaries taking rents along the way. So that really fit well with my thesis about giving back. That fit well with my thesis about intermediaries. That fit well with my thesis about the use case for NFTs. And here I am today and, trying to do my best to continue to support that and also move the space forward.
Hi, I'm Raoul Pal, the CEO and co-founder of realvision. The financial world is a complicated world right now. It's a really complicated macro picture, and there's a lot of risks. realvision and our YouTube channel help you navigate those risks. So subscribe now to the channel and never miss an update. There is simply too much going on. So subscribe now. Thank you.
That's awesome. It's a very holistic way of looking at the space. I think something that you don't see a lot from latest entrants that are mostly driven by the hype. AC, what about yourself? What's your background and how did you come into NFTs?
So I come from more of an entrepreneurial background than Bats. I was an aerospace founder, and that means my niche was sourcing aircraft parts, kind of with this there's this technical arbitrage, I like to call it, within different Boeing and Airbus kind of classifications where there's inefficiencies, I guess, in this aerospace market that continues. It's a very manual kind of analog system. So come from that background and kind of actually, so this is a world where provenance is the part is worthless if the traceability of it is compromised in any way. And so the provenance was you survived as well as you preserved where your parts came from. And so I kind of got into using Bitcoin as this ledger to anchor. I would hash these traceability files and then anchor them into Bitcoin and then try to teach my customers that it was cool. And it was just it just didn't, so it didn't really go anywhere because, Bitcoin has its limitations. As I say this as a Bitcoin miner and somebody who's loved it for a long time. So kind of led me, simultaneously in a separate path. I enjoyed collecting art. Being a Miami local, Art Basel's like the Super Bowl, and I would just be curious. And so it kind of leads me to collecting generative art before NFTs were really blowing up. So 2018, 2019, a friend of mine, Sofia Garcia, kind of curated these art shows with Dmitry Cherniak and with Tyler Hobbs, names that now are champions of artists in the generative art space. And so back then they were selling for $500. And I bought one of their pieces, Tyler's pieces, back in 2019. And then, on this provenance mindset, I was like, wow, using art blocks, an artist is able, Tyler, when I bought the piece, printed the code, the JavaScript of it, handed it to me in paper. And I didn't know what to do with it. I was kind of thanks. Is this a certificate or? So it was interesting. And then art blocks, I was like, wow, everything that was clunky about the physical, purchasing that print that Tyler did is perfectly tokenized. And then, it just clicked in this one very esoteric moment where I was like, so anyhow, fast forwarding to kind of realizing what Art Blocks was doing, collecting it as early as I had that aha moment, and kind of having the mentality of this is 2013, 2014 Bitcoin from when I was paying attention to things. And this felt so new. I was like, okay, the generative art was already a genre of art with respect. And now it's merging with the blockchain as a way of, and then thinking in my aviation background, provenance existing on this ledger is going to take over everything. And so what would the art on that ledger and the early cave paintings, to use a cheesy example, but what would the early art from that period be worth if this really does line up the way I kind of foresaw things? So that's my story. And I'm happy to continue it with Bats and the other members of the team.
No, that's awesome. I think, two of the main pillars of the space, one being provenance and the other one being the ability to cut out middlemen, or at least really minimize their pricing power. The fact that you both have backgrounds in industries that led you to that and now, converge in the NFT space is super interesting. And that's why I'm really excited about this conversation today. Now, your personal collections, again, AC, you're more on the generative art side. Bats, you're more on the one-on-one side, but you both collect across the spectrum. You are members of 6529 Capital. which is the largest NFT collecting fund out there, led by Punk 6529, but you guys have a fairly large team. How did that come about, right? 6529 came into the space almost, maybe one would say a few months really after it really started popping off. Road to Prominence, writing some really insightful threads. And then the fund was announced and you guys were on the team. Walk me through, connecting with Punk 6529 and also, deciding to really create what is now, like I said, the premier NFT investing fund.
It was, it felt like a higher calling when he came to me, because I was kind of like in this this like self-collecting bubble, and then he kind of had this way of painting the big picture and saying, if it's not us, it's like the Citadels of the world just coming, and like literally the institutions coming. I mean, obviously something has to exist for the big institutions to think there's something worth taking in our market. But it was like other people will raise the money, and so he kind of had this calling of like, we are Web3 native. Punk 6529 and I realized in hindsight we followed each other on Twitter for quite a while. Once he realized, so anyhow, I kind of was like, okay, I could put my own collecting aside for this. This is something that feels worthwhile. It's like, if we don't do it, again, it could be done by people with less, with not the same ideals of like, a crypto specific a crypto birth movement, we'll call it. So yeah, I mean, Bats, please shed light.
This is a funny story, actually. I had spoken with 6529 a couple times. Middle of last year, we were collecting and bidding against each other and so forth. Gained a healthy amount of respect from back then. I'm on a flight. I go to NFT NYC. This was Halloween of 2021. I get off the flight and I have a message, and it's from 6529 saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you. I'm down in Soho having a drink. Would you please join me?" And it's like, I think my flight landed at 8:30. And normally I get to New York. I used to live in New York. And my initial reaction is, don't answer the phone, don't respond to any messages whatsoever. Because typically what it means is it's someone, and I end up spending, till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I feel like shit the rest of the trip. And that first night, I'm always kind of like trying to be sacred about not going out. So I don't know what it was, but I decided to respond, and I said, okay, I'll come have a drink. So I hop in an Uber. We head down to Soho, and it's the Village. And of course, on Halloween, like an idiot, I forgot that the Village has the Halloween parade. So the Uber could get nowhere near this place where I'm supposed to meet 6529. I have the guy drop me off about a mile away, and I'm walking through the Halloween parade with my rollerboard bag, looking like a complete dumbass. I get to the place, I finally find the place, and it's absolutely packed, and there's no one there whatsoever that you would think could possibly be 6529. He's not answering his phone. He's not responding to DMs. I'm walking around this place with my rollerboard, and finally I'm just like, fuck this, I'm out of here. So I'm on my way out, and it just so happens that there's one person in the entire place that might be it, and I have like I'm thinking that there's like a 2% chance this is him. And I went up to this person, and it turned out to be him. And yes, we ended up staying out till 4 o'clock in the morning, much to my chagrin. So that was the initial meeting. The real hook, though, the best, for me, the main reason why I'm here and the main reason why I'm so excited about this is really the decentralized metaverse that 6529 and team are building. The investment team fits in perfectly with this. We can buy Grail art and put it on display in the metaverse in a very decentralized fashion on open rails. So, I said that I spent a ton of my life, recently giving back. The thought of Mark Zuckerberg running the metaverse is so disgusting to me that, in a way, 6529, as I was having this sort of moment of just complete and utter disgust, 6529 was here with a solution to this problem. And I took to it immediately, like absolutely immediately. I think it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to attack the metaverse and build the metaverse, quite frankly, in a way that is open, decentralized, and not really controlled by one person. I mean, we're looking right now at what Twitter looks like under Elon Musk, and the first 48, 72 hours have not been great. Why does the CEO of Twitter get to control the short messaging platform of the internet? So that's the main reason why I'm here and how we met.
Those are awesome stories. I have my 6529 story as well, but I'll leave it for another conversation later down the road. AC, you mentioned the higher calling, and Bats, you mentioned, having that mission of helping the open metaverse. However, you guys are still running an investment fund. I'm assuming your investors are in for the profit. They're looking to get a return on their capital. How do you guys kind of, balance both sides? And, I would love to hear maybe a little bit of what is the investment pitch when you go to one of these institutionals and say, hey, give us millions of dollars. We are doing XYZ.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely, it's been an honor in this like fiduciary relationship alongside like some very legendary partners. Wildly impressed with like Batsoup, 6529, Barad. Everyone has kind of this experience of really just like, I don't know, of most professionalism. So I think the broad thesis for the fund is that, in a world that's increasingly going digital, again, do you want these assets to belong on a Facebook or Google server, or do you want them on a sovereign decentralized chain? And so I think, for the most part, people are going to follow the latter. There's difficulty in that. There's like, pure sovereignty. There's these things that will be ironed out. And so a lot of our fund investments are also, 10% of our fund is to back infrastructure in this space on NFT onboarding, et cetera. Web3 onboarding, right? So infrastructure that could bring 100 million, a billion users to the open metaverse is kind of like our calling. But so we think that in a world where like, crypto's market cap is $1 trillion and fungibles are 99% of that and non-fungibles are 1%. We think that, we kind of want to take that trading pair on the non-fungible side where a lot of the world's like the intangibles in the like NASDAQ balance sheet are in the several trillions. So we think a lot of intangible value will be represented through tokens. And in a world where that exists, like there's going to be these power law size returns, similar to tech and similar to art, where there's like power laws at the Louvre, you go to see the Mona Lisa, and where there's power laws in like online search or short messaging service, there is going to be power law returns in essentially owning these tokens, these grail assets, these like these early artifacts of this movement, right? As like, so as we onboard kind of not all traditional finance, but the efficient parts, and as we onboard a lot of things into ERC 721 standard or 720, the ability to own these non-fungibles is like we see that there could be outsized returns in this like 1% of crypto market cap trade against the rest of it. And then we think obviously in a 10-year time frame, everything is going to, crypto is going to eat a lot of, the global balance sheet. And so that's kind of the thesis.
One of the main points Raul has made about, the tokenization of intangibles on corporate balance sheets. And it's interesting to hear you guys use it as part of the pitch. Bats, did you want to add something to what AC said?
Yeah, I would say that, just to add to this, the basic pitch is as follows. The Louvre has 35,000 works on display at any given time. The Louvre owns 380,000 works. The Louvre is perhaps the greatest museum on planet Earth, or one of them. And yet, if you ask a normal person to name how many pieces do you know at the Louvre, maybe 2, sometimes 3. Mona Lisa, Venus de Milo, and most people tend to get stuck there. And the point of the story is that power laws exist in art into a very, very, very extreme case. If you combine that with meme culture and this sort of culture of being able, spreading the word on the internet rather than word of mouth, it becomes extraordinarily powerful. So the way that think about things that as memes today, for example. Make America Great Again is a meme. Just Do It by Nike is a meme. Everybody knows those. If you can spread that via the internet and combine that with the power laws and art, like I said, it becomes very powerful. So the basic pitch for the fund is that we believe, a very short amount of time to try to acquire the top pieces that we believe will exhibit power laws over time. And if we're successful at it, I'm not saying we will be, but if we are successful at it, the return profile of a fund like this could be quite dramatic. I think it's still TBD. I think every day that goes by, even in a bear market, validates the thesis. I mean, there's no question digital art is art, right? I mean, people tend to say, well, it's NFTs. And I feel like, it was funny. I saw last week Reddit onboarded 3 million wallets to NFTs by not calling them NFTs. They called them digital objects. The general public hates the term NFTs. But if you set that aside for a moment, digital art and digital objects are very, very valuable. They will be very valuable to you in your life as life goes on. And digital art is unquestionably art. Blockchain happened to come along and turn digital art into something that could be validated as, owned, and, when was it created, and so on and so forth. But digital art has always been a thing. It just happened to find blockchain along the way. So I don't think there's any question that digital art is A, art, and B, going to be incredibly valuable in the future. I think the only question in my mind is, how does that manifest itself? Which artists rise to the top? What kind of art will people prefer versus others? Generative art, I think, is a spectacular use case for the digital art medium and NFTs. So we spend a lot of time there. It's still a lot. It's so early days. A lot of it's TBD, but the end to me is not uncertain whatsoever. We are heading towards a very dramatic upswing for the digital world.
That actually leads me to my next question, which is drawing on your experience managing funds and hedge funds in the traditional finance world. What are the parallels to your investment committee? Like, how do you guys choose those artists who you think are going to exhibit those power laws? Give us a little insight into what that boardroom meeting is like when you guys are deciding who you're going to collect, how much to pay for them, and how you're going to execute those trades.
I remember living through 2008, and every single day you would wake up and the market was a roller coaster. I remember driving along the highway and seeing, again, 2008, I had a really good year. I was driving along the highway, I'd see somebody mowing the grass and thinking, I wish I were that guy. That's how crazy it was. That's the kind of environment we were in. And there are days, I have to tell you, in this space where I wake up and I think the exact same thing. It is insane. It is, running a fund on steroids, with too many cups of caffeine and cocaine. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. This is insanity. And it's 24/7. Blockchains don't shut down on Christmas and New Year's. I'm sorry, but you've got to be on your game. So, that's sort of the general backdrop. For us, I don't think, and this is something that I've practiced my entire career. I'm not, and we're not going to be the people that go on a mission of discovery trying to figure out who the next Beeple or who the next, Van Gogh or who the next, I kind of am hesitant to say this, but I don't have a strong art background. This is not I'm not going to be the person that goes and curates the next digital museum in Dubai. That's not who I am. But what I can do is I listen to markets, and what this team does really well, and I would throw AC very much in this group. We listen to the market. We see where trends are emerging. We try and not outsmart what the market is doing. Now, it turns out this market does a lot of really stupid things, so we have to be extraordinarily thoughtful about how we approach it. And we are. We spend an unbelievable amount of time on price and on which artists, which pieces. But that being said, it is not a mystery to me who are likely of the top 5 greatest selling artists right now on the web. You can go find them. Of that group, that is the highest probability group to exhibit power laws over time. So we're going to start there and start thinking about, what's the right price for art in that group. So AC, I don't know if you want to add that, but go ahead.
I mean, it's hard to dispute anything you said or add much more color because I think that is how we operate. I think that is kind of the gift of having 6x9 and Batsu kind of as operators now, fund operators in a very inefficient space like early like so $1 trillion market cap on total crypto and I don't know 10 billion on NFTs if it's like 1% of the total crypto market cap. So I think it's like there's a serious advantage to the way that we're operating given our partner backgrounds and again we do have curators. We do use we'll like contract some curators and help us on the artistic approach of things and kind of so we do get the like feedback loop kind of what has worked in the past and what has scaled and kind of what crypto does. But I happen to agree with managing his portfolio the way that Batsup has kind of done and led us him and 6529. Let me end it there. I think he answered that pretty perfectly.
I would say the only thing I would add is that, we talk to each other obviously about every single investment. This is not a, hey, I really want to buy a punk, I'm going to go buy it. Like, you got to bring your A game. I mean, we're not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Well, we should really go and spend, invest LP money buying a punk that they can just go out and do themselves. Like, I can go buy a punk right now. Why do I need 6529's team to do that? So every single investment is highly scrutinized. I'm sure AC is sick of me jumping down his throat about everything that happens at the fund, but that's why we're here. We're not here to that's how you generate alpha. We're not here to I can go market buy anything. Why would I do that? You really have to I spent 20 years on Wall Street or however many years it was, and I'm working harder now than I ever worked in my 20 years on Wall Street, right? It's like there's an unbelievable amount of effort put forth to try and find the right things and invest in the right things. But I think it's paying off.
No, it's for sure. You see 6529 capital moving in the space, and obviously you guys are tastemakers in that while you might not be doing the finding of brand new artists as you alluded to earlier, Bats, when you guys either personally or through a fund buy a piece, the artist gets a lot of airtime and a lot of interest and attention. How do you guys personally balance that power that you guys have with really, keeping to the ethos of the space, which you both talked about at the beginning of the conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I think if listeners are not aware, essentially all transactions are public. This is not traditional art where transactions are pretty obfuscated and who's buying what and at what price. For the most part, everything's on chain. An OTC transaction still shows that we obviously acquired an artist, and so I think it comes with a lot of. I've had regret on some purchases where the market is really right behind us and just jumps on something, but you kind of have to. You kind of have to be mindful of it. I think it's definitely something now that's first of mind as we make a decision. It's going to be public. What's going to happen? What's the consequences? Are we filled here? Should we make sure we fill in one bite? How do we want to kind of it's you want to fill a position on an artist, and as soon as you buy one piece, you're already not necessarily anointing, but someone mindful could see what you just did. So we definitely operate with scrutiny amongst each other as partners, and then how does this affect the market? And I think it adds some fun to things when I think just 2 weeks. So I think there was Loie Hollowell is a traditional artist with a wait list at Pace Gallery. She's I've spoken to physical collectors who are I can't believe she's doing an NFT. I can't even get her physicals. And so we executed quite quickly on this, where we knew that her market was not going to know how to set up the MetaMask on time. We went ahead and filled, and we saw quite an outsized return since our since like kind of the success of this project. And sure enough, the next time that wallet bought something, there was like 30 transactions behind it. So those things happen in crypto where maybe on a centralized exchange you don't get that kind of pure transparency. So it's a good question. We navigate it as like professionally as we can, but obviously we are trying to do best for our investors and feel at the best, at the best cost basis. And so we have to really be surgeons and precise on executing. And that kind of is where, look, as Bats has said, any of our LPs could go and buy a punk, or they could tell their son to go buy a punk. We do not sweep floor punks. That's not what we're here to do. We are here to be like, precise missiles on, where we land. And so it comes with a lot of attention, but I think it's made us a lot better operators in the market and way, way more efficient than when we were ever personal collectors.
That's anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that, just as with background, I'm pretty sure we are the largest buyer of NFTs in the world today. I don't expect that necessarily to be the case, 3, 4, 5 years from now, but we for sure are today, and we know it, and we take that responsibility very, very seriously. So there are different ways to support the space. In my mind, this is me talking. This is not 6529 fun talking, but there are different ways to support this space. We are supporting it financially, unquestionably, right now. Anybody can go into our wallets and see what we've been buying, see what we're doing, and in fact, that happens. As AC just said, the Louis Hollowell drop is a good example. There's also overt support on social media, which we do quite a bit of. And then you could even take a step further and buy out a big room at our Basel and these big, large venues to promote it that way. We are at inning 1, in my opinion, very, very tip of the iceberg in supporting the entire space. We could be doing a ton more. The question is, what does that look like and what's the best way to do it? And I don't know that anybody has necessarily cracked that yet. I mean, you can't even buy a display that is, user-friendly, functional, and so forth without paying $30,000 to do it. It's like, I cannot stress enough how early this is. So I feel like, we are learning alongside the space. We want to promote, we plan to promote everything in this space. Right now, we're very overtly doing it financially, like I said, but we are very cognizant that we can do a lot more.
Thank you for that. That was very thoughtful and insightful. Kind of just building up on supporting the space and what you mentioned earlier about 6529's focus on really helping the open metaverse. Obviously, the project that you guys have launched, which for the audience, if you're not aware, OM is a free to visit, free to use metaverse world built on Cyber, which 6529 and the team have been allowing different artists and different communities to build galleries on it, to build different presences on it. It's become kind of a gathering place for these virtual communities. You mentioned why you guys did it, but what is next? What is really the ultimate goal besides beating, Mark? Like, what is the view here? What's in 15 years? What you guys would like to see OM become?
I'm going to punt that question because I think it's better for 6529 to answer than for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to.
One then. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes, with bats, but it's like someone asked me the other day to predict it, and I was like, I would prefer not to, because if I could predict it, then it's already the past. I've already kind of conceived it. It's just supposed to go and happen. And I think it's fun to be in the space investing in founders who are eager to execute their vision of it. And so, it's like a lot of hubris in a specific answer on what it should look like. I think I'll answer it with excitement for being surprised. And hopefully we are surprised, because like things, if we could predict what the metaverse will look like, I don't think anyone's been wildly excited. I mean, obviously it's a hype word and people love to. But like if it's Ready Player One or like Facebook's vision of the metaverse, then But if there is genuine surprisal, it's because some entrepreneurs have done things that are 0 to 1, and I think I welcome that, and I would hate to try to predict it. I would say that we do look at the founders who are eager, and it's an honor, honestly. These are the best of the best. I've seen top talent from Instagram, like quantitative minds that shame a lot of the other big names in the space. Like we finally have founders building products that they want to see, and this collection, this not an art collection, but an assortment of founders doing this is a net benefit for free and sovereign citizens online, which is like, I mean, what no better world to kind of look forward to.
Yeah, I would just add, Ohm currently has by far, I mean, I don't think there's anyone even close, by far the largest collection of digital art on the planet. I mean, there is thousands of galleries set up by artists, set up by myself and the team, the funds. The 6529 Museum is maybe the greatest collection of digital art on the planet. That's in there. It's spectacular. And starting with that kind of culture as your backstop, to me, it says a lot about how we view our view of the metaverse. I don't know where it's going to go exactly. Again, I think 6529 is a much better person to ask this question. I would just say that before I joined this team, I was living a very comfortable life, working, in charities, working, 9 to 5. I was very happy with that life, and I would never have joined this team if I didn't believe so strongly in the vision. And I believe as strongly today as I did then. I really think this decentralized metaverse and the direction this is heading, it needs to happen. It has to happen. We cannot have a world where we are looking through a pair of AR glasses that Mark Zuckerberg is standing behind. Like I said, that is a very scary place to me.
Yeah, and I think to finish, Bats, thanks for that. I think to tie it with like the open metaverse, I think 6529's vision is kind of like with my answer, is to just empower the people who could build it with like the tooling to not have a barrier of entry, or like we didn't sell digital land. We didn't do any, like 6529's vision of the metaverse is like, you guys got to build it. The creators have to build it. So it's an empowering thing. And, so I think, he would answer it much more eloquently, but yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And we'll definitely get 6529 hopefully back on the show. If anybody has seen the video, the interview between Raul and 6529 is probably one of the most riveting conversations I've ever heard, not just in Real Vision, but in my life. One of the cliches of the industry really is that, it's still too early. It's obviously a fact, right? It's by nature, it's still too early. It's been only a year or two, but we are already seeing some of the shortcomings of the space as well. I think currently, the NFT space and even the crypto industry as a whole is really facing some challenging times. And obviously, there's a lot of brains being put to work are trying to make things better. But what is your current assessment of the NFT space, especially as it comes down to the fact that royalties, which are the lifeblood of supporting artists and making sure that artists are rewarded for their work, the fact that they're not enforceable by smart contract and they're more part of the social layer. We'd love to get both of your takes on this current moment.
I think NFTs currently today fit into 3 broad categories. Profile pictures, which we call PFP, even though it's only 2 words, which is, I don't know how that came about, but whatever. Generative art and one-of-one art. And there's other stuff, there's sports and things like that out there. But, if you think about it, generally those 3 broad categories. The PFPs have really dominated the conversation. That's really punks and bored apes and things like that. But it's also all of that other stuff that, you see on the news, weird kittens and, stupid, bored, other apes, all these derivative projects that popped up. And that's where all the mania and the craziness happened in the last year. I really think in terms of royalties, that those types of projects, unfortunately, are highly conducive to getting around the royalty structure. I believe those royalties are all going to zero. I don't see a sustainable model for hanging on to royalties in PFP collections. I'm not sure it's necessarily a horrible thing, but I do feel bad for the creators who are currently have PFP projects who are counting on those revenue streams. So I don't think the outlook there is very good, and the reason why is because you can create platforms that take advantage of those liquidity pools. So you can aggregate those liquidity pools in times of mania when those PFPs are going crazy. People can go onto these liquidity pools and choose to pay zero royalties, and guess what? They're going to. I think that's exactly, and you're seeing it happen already. If you separate out art, generative and one-of-one, I think that it's a bad omen that PFP royalties are going to zero, but I think there's still time and there's still hope to save royalties in those two other categories. So just for the listeners out there, the royalty debate comes down to essentially after the primary purchase is sold, in my mind. I think you can still collect royalties on a primary sale. On a secondary sale, this is very unlike the traditional art world, because on a secondary sale, we have now built in tools to allow the creator to collect a royalty payment every time that piece is sold. I view this as fantastic. I mean, I think this is empowering creators. This is allowing creators. These are people who are, this is kind of an R&D engine for humanity. And now we want to take away a beautiful, this fantastic revenue stream that we've created for these people to continue to create and send that to zero. I mean, honestly, I'm quite disgusted by the whole thing. But I do think it's not too late to save that royalty stream. And I actually am pretty optimistic. I'm more optimistic today than I was yesterday, for sure. And that stream can be saved. And the biggest reason why is because art doesn't trade like PFPs. Art is not highly liquid. Art, these are larger, chunkier transactions. You might get one or two trades, maybe. I mean, at best, it's not a high frequency type of event to trade a Fidenza or to trade an X copy one-of-one. It's it happens once in a while. So therefore, it's not obvious to me that anyone has an incentive to build a platform to get around royalties in something that trades once a year at best.
AC, your thoughts?
So I would say the profile picture market, your Bored Apes and the like, are royalties to zero. It's hard to tax on that stuff, and they live on volume and attention. And so I don't know how any PFP creator would get that back. They'll try to maybe incentivize paying it with like memberships. Ape Fest will likely not have anyone that bought or sold a royalty-free Bored Ape, but it's just it's interesting. I've loved Foobar. That's 0xFOOBAR. Foobar wrote a fantastic piece on royalties like months ago. Prescient piece. It was inevitable. They're not on-chain enforceable, and so it's inevitable for someone to come and take it away. Some exchange to come and take market share, and for users to go there. It was just like, it was sad, obviously, when creators were anticipating it, or anticipating that income. I think in the one-of-one and generative art space, you'll probably still see royalties paid by sellers who care about their relationship with the artist. They want to take part maybe in the future primaries. And I think ultimately, creators are going to have to work on their primaries a lot more carefully. And that might be, 6529 has mentioned it on Twitter. It just means more inflation. This is like tax or inflation. How do you want to, which would you like? So it kind of comes with the cryptoification of all markets on chain, that art, like the one-of-one and generative art, are just going to be subject to what the PFP volume is kind of forcing, and TBD on the solution. The royalties are taxed on the person selling as they're leaving something, and so I didn't think that they were going to be sustainable for a long time. I just hope I hope artists could this crypto in general, whether you're an NFT artist who came to this space strictly to sell art, the thing with crypto is that it kind of kills anybody who cannot improvise with conviction. And so you can't be a deer in the headlights in crypto markets because they're just so ADHD, hyper aggressively, like, inefficiencies just get like flattened, and smart money, so I am deeply concerned with any artist who was hanging on to secondary royalty income streams, secondary transactions breeding royalties, which bred income. So I would like to, help artists kind of pivot into a direction that is a little, more friendly for them on the primaries. And, I'm watching to see how kind of this plays out.
Yeah, it's one thing to just add on to that. I mean, the disruption in this space is, again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast. We have never seen markets like this ever. And what happened with royalties is that you had a couple of exchanges. OpenSea used to dominate the volume and still does, although to a lesser extent today. And you had a couple of exchanges differentiate themselves by going to zero royalties. And that persisted actually for a little while. Some people traded there and it wasn't that big a deal. And then you had one particular exchange in the last month come out with a very slick user interface and take 20% market share in a month. I mean, holy moly, that is an astounding number to me. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen disruption like that in my entire career. And that is incredible. So OpenSea had to respond, and they are responding right now. Nothing's definitive yet, but it does look like they are heading in the direction of no royalties. And unfortunately, they have a lot of artists on that platform. And I'm not dumping on OpenSea at all. I actually think they made the right decision. They had to do this. They have to do this because they're going to lose massive amounts of market share because most of the trading is not in art. The problem is that you also rugged all the artists on the platform. So I think to date, what we've seen is the industry leading the charge on this towards zero. I'm actually interested in seeing what happens when the artists construct some sort of response, because I actually think the artists have a lot more power in this debate than they think. They're just not as well organized to come up with a response yet. But I do think that one is coming, because there's no obvious reason to me why a one-of-one artist, or why Tyler Hobbs, a generative artist, needs to be on a PFP platform like OpenSea and like some of these other ones that are out there. I really think that they can organize and create their own model. Just because they're NFTs doesn't mean they're all the same. There's one-of-one art, there's PFPs.
I hope the artists are careful. These are permissionless bearer assets. These tokens are bigger than what they might be thinking. Like, art is important, and an artist thinks that their creation is the most important thing, and I appreciate that. But what we're doing here in crypto is like a really, so you're going to have that wave of the market kind of forcing what's going to happen. And I think artists need to be able to surf that wave. Don't fight it, because this is your market. This is what you sell into.
That's super insightful. And we've had many artists here on this show and other Real Vision shows, and certainly share their perspective on what really brought them to NFTs. And obviously one of the main things is that royalty that hopefully continues to support their creativity and their career. So I'm hopeful to see the industry really come to a resolution. And I personally think, we're in the first inning. Usually the first iteration of anything is not really the end all. I agree with you both that, we should separate PFPs and art, and maybe provide, dedicated marketplaces that allow those artists to connect closer to the collectors and be able to select those collectors a little better, and make sure that those collectors really want to stay within their collector artist community. Shifting roles a little bit, or shifting gears a little bit here once again, as we come to the top of the hour. A topic that I think the three of us have very, very, very close to our hearts. Very active members in this community. It's a community of builders, of OGs, of collectors. You mentioned the power of the memes and how, humanity thrives on memes. You guys are, on the personal side and the institutional side, big holders of crypto dick butts. And I would love to kind of just put on your institutional investor hat and share with us why dick butts and why the fund continues to add them every season, building again one of the best dick butt collections out there.
So crypto dick butts are, for your audience, a silly, interesting, weird, cartoon that was made long before blockchain and long before they were put on chain. They've been out I don't know quite how long, but they've been out for quite a while. And what ended up happening, and I find this so fascinating, is I think it's actually a really interesting and great case study for why Web3 is so interesting. I mean, believe it or not, it really is. And here's what happened. Crypto dick butts to me on the internet represent degenerate idiots. And I count myself among them. I own a really good one. I mean, I own a couple of good ones, but I am for sure a degenerate idiot in my off season. My name's Batsoupyum. I mean, it doesn't get more, dumber than that. So, it represents, this sort of degenerate idiocy culture on the internet. And what happened was someone, a genius, this genius in Discord, decided to organize them in a collection. And what that did, and by tokenizing them and by organizing them into sort of an NFT collection, what that did is it organized the degenerate idiots. And it turns out there's a lot of degenerate idiots on the internet. Again, I count myself among them. So when you organize degenerate idiots, the power, it's unbelievable. I mean, you can just go in the crypto dick butts and it's absolute insanity in there sometimes. But it's fun. It's interesting. It's like it's it's an opportunity for professionals like me. I mean, I'm loath to call myself a professional after this discussion, but a professional like me gets a chance to act like a degenerate idiot now and then, and I like it. I mean, I'm a shit poster too every once in a while, as we all are. We're here to have fun. It's not all like serious. I'm super serious Mr. Chat art digital art buyer or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I ruffle at that type of culture. That's the old culture. That's the culture that I'm trying to get away from. The new culture is fun. The new culture is, again, I can act like an idiot on social media, but I'm also, have a day job doing what I'm doing here. So I really think that crypto dick butts, they represent this culture on the internet of just acting sort of funny and foolishly or whatever, and it was captured on blockchain somehow and organized, and that really became the power of that meme. And I can't think of a better one. I think that is ground zero for degenerate idiots, and I truly believe in them over time. Obviously, I own one, like I said. So.
Yeah, you own a few, Bats. You own a few. I think I mean, I think in a world where like 24-year-olds who lived, like one good bull market are writing Twitter threads like they're Paul Graham, and this like, it's like, hey, don't take yourself too serious. Like the ownership of a crypto dick butt is a way of, financially you have to spend, north of like $3,000 or something. I got to look at the floor price. And then it's also like, hey, I'm not throwing this money away. I see value in this mimetic, this like the power of memes, and then the important social signal is I don't take myself too seriously, and it's created this fantastic filter of collectors able to like. We're not talking people who lucked up in like the right coin, like Meltem, it's you, Sergio, Bat Soup, like phenomenal, Arthur Hayes, like people who have built crypto for a very long time, since like 2013 or earlier, spend a lot of their free time in these group chats and having fun with each other on this. It's kind of like our vent from the potential that we do take ourselves too seriously, and this doesn't become fun. And so this is kind of where we have this vent release valve, as like an aviation term, where you're able to let off some steam, laugh about like dicks and butts and stupid, silly things. And again, yeah, the countercultural moment, like no art movement was embraced by its predecessor. And so these are kind of like better than Bored Apes. Like, don't make fun of like, people use Bored Apes. It's like, no. Look at my crypto dick butt. It's even more ridiculous than you think. and we're spending money on this, and I'm putting my attention behind this, and I have plenty of other things I could probably be doing with my life. But this is where I want to be with the people that also own this. So, the last thing about the PFP vertical is that it's a very good solution for human loneliness on the internet. It is a way of like socially producing a Dunbar of people that you could embrace and be like communal with, and still have your guard up. There's bad actors in every collection. Like, I'm not saying just like get naked with these people. It's kind of got this Metcalfe's law effect within it, where like people severely misunderstood Bored Apes when they and like they were making fun of monkeys until they went to $500,000 floor. And that was really like there was a lot of exuberance and euphoria within that, but it had this network effect, like perfectly executed in a JPEG. And so just taking it down a notch, not getting necessarily ridiculous with an entry price, but finding a community with that kind of effect in its ranks, we'll call it, is a very, very, very powerful thing. My fellow dick butts are invited to my house in Miami. They could see my art. I trust them. And I think that is like not necessarily something I would extend to my other social collections, we'll call them, in my portfolio. But dick butts persist, and one dick equals one butt. And we kind of have this like incredible mimetic religious cult here. I think dick butts are quite a fun way of making sense of all this ridiculousness.
And if you're interested, if the listeners here are interested in dick butts, they should definitely not type in Beeple crypto dick butt into the Google check. Beeple's the by far the highest grossing digital artist of all time. Sold a piece last year for $69 million. He creates these artworks once a day. He calls them every days. And the other day he created a crypto dick butt that it still haunts me. I'm a dick butt fan.
Look, it broke the internet. I think it's only added value to kind of this mimetic path that dick butts are on. It's like the grail artist of this era, the highest selling Christie's artist and stuff for digital art is adding lore to kind of our storyline here, and it is extremely repulsive. But art is supposed to evoke something in you, and I thank people for doing this. But don't Google it. To the listeners, do not Google it. Just go to Crypto Dick Butts on OpenSea and kind of have a giggle if you're curious what it looks like. But and yeah.
I think you guys touched on a couple of really good concepts to kind of like close our conversation on, tokenized culture, network effects, Metcalfe's law, NFTs today, silly JPEGs sometimes, really good digital art 101 generative, but this is just the beginning. What other industries, and obviously AC, you mentioned you trying to implement blockchain provenance verification in the aerospace industry, in which you had your businesses before this. What other industries do you guys see adopting NFTs and really kind of fulfilling that prophecy of non-fungible tokens becoming the Trojan horse that helps us onboard the next 100 million, 1 billion people to blockchain?
Quite a few years ago, there was a gentleman named Kevin Kelly who wrote an essay called 1,000 True Fans. Chris Dixon evolved it last year, I believe it was, into something that applied to NFTs. It's a must read. I think it's one of the best essays I've read on Web3. The story goes as follows. I'm paraphrasing it, but there's an old, sort of maxim in finance where it's called the 80-20 rule, where you make 80% of your profits off of 20%, your best 20% customers. And, it varies by industry, obviously, but it's generally in marketing firms, they kind of start there and tweak it. There is no better use case for that I have ever seen than in this space, than in NFTs in particular. And I'll tell you why. You're an artist, let's say. You sell your NFTs, you sell your artwork. You might follow up that piece with, I don't know, it's what's called an edition drop. You might sell 100 pieces that look exactly the same for a much more accessible price than you could buy the one-of-one piece. Let's say you sell them for, I don't know, $100 each. After that sale is completed, if you've sold out, you know exactly who your true fans are. You know exactly the wallets, You know, a lot of times you know their names, you know they spent money on you. They are your true fans. They are absolutely willing to support you and buy this piece. And most of the time, a lot of these editions, you know, they don't really trade. They're probably not worth what you paid for them at the time. Who knows? Maybe someday down the road they will be, and that's fine. But those collectors have put all that aside and decided proactively, we want to own a piece of this artist because we love them so much. And what ends up happening? 99% of the time, the artist ignores that person and you never hear from them again and they move on to the next project and so on and so forth. It's the exact opposite of what they should do. So with that as a backdrop and trying to get back to your question, the use case for NFTs for me, and again, I know everybody hates this word, but the use case is phenomenal. You think about it from a customer segmentation strategy. These people, instead of you paying hundreds of dollars as a firm to go out and find those customers, they've actually come and found you, which is incredible to me. I mean, you know, Dolce & Gabbana, and I've seen, you know, McDonald's, and I've seen all kinds of these brands sort of come in and test this market out. And it's a brilliant strategy. They should absolutely be here. And you're going to see more and more brands coming to the space. And Nike bought Artifact last year, which owns Clone X. They've made millions of dollars on Clone X. People have voluntarily come and said, we want to be here. And I think as you take that model and spread it out across brands and across products, it becomes far more powerful than you having to go find those customers. Very specifically, I think if you think about NFTs in the nearer term, what it can disrupt, art is such a good use case for the NFT business because digital art existed. There was no way to monetize it. Intermediaries all over the place. NFTs come along, bam, you can go direct to your truest fans and cut all that out. What is another great industry for that? I mean, music to me strikes me as a very, very interesting use case. You know, labels take incredible amounts of royalties over time. You could probably make the argument that some people deserve that and so forth. But any industry where intermediaries are taking extraordinarily high rents and it's questionable whether or not they are providing ongoing value that is worthy of that rent taking is an industry that's ripe for this type of disruption in my mind. And like I said, music is a really good one, but there are many, many others. There's quite a lot of this intermediary rent seeking and rent taking going on out there.
I laugh about the IBM commercial of like 4 years ago about tracking a tomato on the blockchain because I think it's like inverted. I need to see something worth $5 million, like a landing gear for a 777 or something, right? Like, start with the easy stuff where, like, so to put my aviation hat on, the way the world works now in aviation is like, if a part fails on a 787 and like the plane is leaving in, let's say, 2 or 3 hours, ideally there's a stock room nearby that the airline or it's like One World or Star Alliance partner could kind of support. But if not, they go online, they search it in a directory, and people lie in this directory and they misrepresent the condition and the readiness of a part just so that they can get the order. But like in the urgent need of one, the demand does not know the current state. And so what better way of like actually proving the state of an asset than on chain? If you could actually like upload into the metadata something that could prove its current state, then like you reduce billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of supply chain noise. And airlines end up actually overpaying the shit out of a part just to reduce the lead time of like, first of all, if it's FedEx or UPS, like they will never want to tell a customer a 2-day priority package is going to take 3 days. So like the money they spend to correct a failed part on wing and the time. So I want to kind of paint the picture kind of at like what I saw when I first got into crypto. But as I see kind of how hotels and reservation systems work, and I think 6529 and Raul were talking about this like 10 months ago. 6529 is talking about how, a hotel reservation in August in like, the south of, the south of France, it could potentially be tradable on OpenSea because the owners are no longer able to go. And the hotel chain they've still sold the reservation and then they could maybe make a royalty through some kind of like only somebody who pays the royalty is able to really resell this hotel chain. I think it's interesting who are going to be the first, which industries are going to be the first adopters. I could tell you Boeing and Airbus, when I have always had the conversations with them, were very eager because they do think their intellectual property is monetized by third parties that they would like to not have in the picture. And if those third parties could now cough up a royalty or at least add value through the provenance and show or do some kind of data sharing, then there's I do think it's inevitable. I hate to speak with such assurance. I just know the world of blue ink signatures and like misphotocopied stuff and the oopsies that happens with it. It tallies up to billions of dollars in supply chain inefficiencies. We're working through an inflation crisis because supply chain, like there is just, I'm not talking in the immediate term, but I'm talking in like the 10-year thesis that the fund operates in. There is a lot of use cases to move on chain. We do feel like it's pretty inevitable. And we do act like kind of conduits if we can on certain industries. But you know, I could name many, but I think start at the obvious stuff at the top, medical. I mean, just things that, you know, and you could obscure kind of the information that's stored on chain, but you can still prove it off chain. There's just like I just smile with excitement, and I'm sure my punk is not smiling right now, but I just think the inevitability is quite large, and every day that happens, even on days like today, with like the CZ SBF fiasco, like the technology has not taken a hit. DeFi has not really, you know, NFTs, like these we take these public headline risks, right, that really set the space back. And yet the technology is continuing to onboard just the best technologists of our generation. And it's like, I don't know. You know, I've been asked often the bear case of crypto, and I'm like, I think it's pretty dystopian. It's like, are we just not free on the internet forever? And like, are all the people moving to build in this free world, are they stupid for this decision of like believing that they could act freely online? And so, yeah, I just want to wind it down with like, um, I pretty much believe in my soul, multi-trillions in assets tradable on chain in like a 10-year time horizon where like, you know, there is just so much that needs to move away from central places of failure. It's not just money, it's also assets and just like other balance sheet objects.
Awesome. That leaves me really, really pumped for the future. It's been an amazing conversation hearing both your backgrounds. You know, hopefully the audience understands that, you know, NFTs and trading them is not just a bunch of kids in their mother's basements swapping around monkey pictures, but there's real institutional use cases and applications with really, really smart people like AC, Batsoupyum, and the whole 6529 Capital team behind them, as well as many other teams that are building out there for this future where intangible assets will be on chain, industries will be much more efficient, and we'll continue to develop this new internet culture for the future generations. Gentlemen, thank you very much for spending this hour with us today. I would like to hear any final words from you. Maybe if you want to share where people can find you online or anything else you want to leave our audience with today.
You guys can find me on Twitter at AC the Collector. Don't judge me. And I think, you know, look, I think as ridiculous as like monkey JPEGs and these conversations get, or dick butts, like this is a secular trend of crypto just eating so much of the world and the smartest people joining it. It is a tsunami, and it is something that it's an honor to be just a small little like participant with giants who I use their product. Like I was looking at, you know, some of the products like you're speaking with founders who have built apps that take 13% of your screen time. And they're here to add value. And so this is not, I don't think this is something anyone, you know, even in the macro and what's happening secularly, this is a trend that is, you know, you'll probably get run over doubting it or fading it or, you know, whatever terminology people want to use. And these are typically generational opportunities where you find your way to like surf kind of the momentum. You find your way in the in the tsunami, but I think net positive for, global happiness, we'll call it, is kind of this movement, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
I would just say, in closing, that the space can be quite intimidating. The amount of barriers, and just it's a horrible usability experience. One of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, you have to set up a MetaMask and find Ethereum and store it, and buy it and pay fees and all that other stuff. It's just a disaster. The front ends are all terrible, but yet somehow it's thriving in spite of all that. I mean, it's incredible to watch, and it's a bear market, but things are chugging along fine, and we're still, the secular trend is much higher. So I would just encourage listeners, if you haven't explored the space, it's worth your time. It is one of the more fascinating intellectual exercises I've ever been through. You have to set up a MetaMask, you have to find Ethereum, okay. Go on, buy something small, buy something for $10. Just get your feet wet. It's always more interesting to do it by trying than it is by jumping in full speed. And just get your feet wet a little bit and understand the space a little bit. It is changing quite a lot. It's one of the more innovative subsegments of tech right now. And again, I think a lot of people are cynical about it. Saturday Night Live had a big skit on it last year, and it's easy to roll your eyes. Oh, those tech bros, those crypto bros over there, they're all, what are they up to again? They're idiots, but we kind of put them into the backwater. No, actually, this is the probably single best use case for crypto out there. And I think it's a really good one, and it's worth spending a little time on. So that's what I would say in closing.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And folks, go and try it. And thank you for tuning in today for Raul's Adventures in Crypto. This is Sergio Silva sitting in for Raul today. We'll see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.